All right. So I will be discussing the United States versus Cameron Thomas Crowley case, and he is also known as Vigilance. So who is Vigilance? Vigilance is also known as Cameron Thomas Crowley, who lived in Minnesota. He was 19 years old when he committed the crime. Cameron hacked into databases in retaliation to the incident with the cop who shot a man. So what has Cameron struggled with his whole childhood? According to the United States District Court of Minnesota, Cameron Thomas Crowley had struggled with depression and he has self-medicated. It is mentioned that he also used marijuana for his self-medication, and this resulted in convictions that were drug-related. Where did he grow up? Cameron Thomas Crowley grew up in Little Lakes, Minnesota. He was an only child who had a hard time dealing with mental health as well. And what did he do? Cameron Thomas Crowley got into Minnesota's databases in June of 2017. He transmitted programs, codes, and commands to state computer servers. It was mentioned that he also accessed databases at 2 universities in a school district, but they were not named. Details of the crime committed. Cameron Thomas Crowley reacted to a crime that happened between an officer and an individual. Many people weren't happy, so he hacked into database servers to retaliate. He claimed that he was tired of the injustice, and so he picked a case and retaliated against it. How was the computer instrumental? According to the United States Department of Justice, Cameron Thomas Crowley was able to access computer servers without any authorization, and it caused more than $5,000 in damage. He also caused damages to the transmission of programs, code, and commands that led up to the protected computer servers. So what were the technical issues associated? Computer servers crashed and there were damages of $5,000 or more. What were the efforts that were made? Investigators made an effort to put an end to the crime that was committed against the state of Minnesota, and they made an effort to stop Vigilance. So how police learned about the crime. Police learned about the crime when the servers weren't working properly. Another clue was when Cameron got onto Twitter as Vigilance, and that is when they started to learn about the crime they started to learn about what the crime was about and why it was happening. So how did police learn about the individual? Police learned that Cameron was an individual who was clearly upset about an issue. They learned about him through Twitter because that is how he began to communicate. When was he first arrested and where? Cameron Crowley was arrested June 5th, 2018. He was also arrested in Little Lakes, Minnesota, which is where he is from. Why did this crime happen? This crime happened because Geronimo Yanez, who was an officer with St. Anthony, shot and killed Philando Castile during a traffic stop that was conducted due to a suspicion of being in a robbery. Was the officer ever arrested? Officer Yanez was not arrested. He entered an acquittal. The city of St. Anthony said the officer Yanez was no longer a part of their police department, but they were willing to help him transition into a different career than being an officer. What happened with the victim's family? The mother of the victim stood up in the courtroom and began to yell and scream profanities after they came to a verdict for Officer Yanez. The families of the officer and the victim were exited out of different parts of the courtroom. So what was the reasoning for the officer killing Castile? Castile had a firearm on him when he was pulled over. There was a robbery at the time, and Castile was driving a car that looked like the one that was included in it. Officer Yanez believed that Castile was reaching for his weapon, which ended up with Castile dead. When did the victim get shot, and who was in the vehicle? Castile was killed July 6, 2017, and it was a day after another investigation happened on a different case. Castile had his girlfriend and his daughter in the vehicle with him at the time. What happened in response to the officer shooting the victim? Many people were upset by what happened between Officer Yanez and Philando Castile. According to the article, there were others that stood up to the situation, including Cameron. Individuals lined up on the freeway with signs that said "Remember," and there was a sign next to it that said "No justice, no peace." What was the time gap between the crime with the officer and Vigilance? There was a year gap between the situation with Officer Yanez and Cameron Crowley. According to the article, Cameron mentioned that he was so sorry for his actions when he pleaded guilty. How was Vigilance caught? Vigilance had a Twitter account that he would put updates on. As he tweeted, "Where am I? Clock is ticking." The feds claimed that they were onto him. According to the article, after they got him, they took him to federal court. So how much money was lost during this crime? The plea agreement claimed that there was an estimated loss between $40,000 and $90,000. Many computer servers were damaged during this crime. As mentioned in this article, 4 counts were dismissed against him. So did Cameron have to pay restitution? Cameron ended up paying restitution to the victims that were all affected by the crime that he committed. What info was taken from this crime? Cameron hacked into databases and took individuals' password information, home and work addresses, and telephone numbers. These were all compromised in the crime. Who represented the United States? They were represented by Catherine Buzicki and Sarah Huddleston. These guys are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as well as the ones who represented Cameron Crowley. He was also represented by Douglas Miko, Catherine Rowe, and Ronaldo Alagata, Jr. What was the legal outcome of the case? Cameron was sentenced to 1 count of intentional access to a protected computer. He was also sentenced to 5 years of probation for the crime that was committed. And I got about 4 or 5 slides of my references, so I will just scroll through these and show you.